Michael Schaefer, Ross Johnson, Matt Schultz, and Landon Fry are all here this evening.
Free.
I've been back and
I'm just gonna say it. I've been thinking it for 10 minutes. I don't want a podcast scared.
Oh yeah.
ashes. Now I've seen the road.
Pregnancy is a beautiful thing. Pregnancy is a gift.
Oh, there are stories to tell.
What kind of paint sticks to asteroids? Like, if you don't prime your wall.
Afraid some days, but the road will lead us to a better place.
We are called to emerge from that default setting of self-involvement.
Okay, are we all ready?
Yep.
Okay,
All right.
Here we go.
Hello.
Hey, Grandma, this is Mike.
Yeah, I was on the phone with Danny right now.
Oh, that explains it. Yeah, we were trying to call you. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me to call you on your cell phone?
Well, this is okay like this. I'm sitting in my lazy boy now.
Okay, good. Okay.
Nice.
So I have me and all of my friends here on the call. So I'm going to remind you of their names. So you guys say hello when I announce your name. Okay. We've got Matt.
Hello.
Hello.
We've got Landon
Hi, Mrs. Tinoco.
Hello.
Hello.
and Ross.
Hello, Mrs. Tinoco.
Hello, how are you?
So, Grandma, they all listened to your interview that you did about a year ago. They thought it was great. Matt didn't even know what the depression was before he heard it.
Oh, he didn't.
I'm just kidding. He does. He did.
Oh, yeah,
So-
kids, in those days, the kids learned that you put so much on your plate and you eat that.
Right, exactly.
You
Yeah.
don't put all this food on your plate and then say, "Oh, I don't want no more."
I know, and that's what I learned growing up. So unless they were onions, obviously, then I wouldn't eat those. But
Oh, you got to have onions on hamburgers.
right. I've heard that before. So, Grandma, tonight's episode is not about the depression, but I told you earlier it's about it's about a speech from the TV show Everybody Loves Raymond. And I remember you used to watch that show, right?
Yeah, it's hard to remember what exactly took place, but yeah, I used to watch that.
So I'll give you a quick refresher. Remember there was Ray Romano and Deborah. Ray sort of had a big nose, dark hair. He was sort of like a dopey husband who couldn't get things right. Does that refresh your memory on?
I guess so.
Yeah, a little bit. Okay. So,
Do you
in the sort-
realize how old I am?
yeah, these guys know. We all know you just turned 96 or 69, as you like to say, on May.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'll take it backwards.
I don't know what happens when you'll turn 99 because that's still 99 the other direction.
Yeah, well, I don't want to live to be 100.
Well, you'll probably hang in there. Who knows? So, Grandma, like I just said, here's maybe a different fun question that maybe you'd like to answer, and as you sort of like introduce us here, since Everybody Loves Raymond was sort of like a dopey husband, not really good for much except telling jokes. Is there a fun story of like Grandpa being particularly generous or kind with helping around the house that you remember?
Well, your grandpa would always help around the house.
Hmm.
I mean, he did help me with the dishes, and he'd wash the floors all the time,
Oh yeah, I remember him washing the floors.
you know. And later on, when I had a hard time dusting the baseboards in the house and that, your grandpa would dust them
Mm-hmm. Right.
for me.
Always a clean house. Still a clean house.
Yeah. And when I'd go to the hospital to have one of the little kids, your mom or somebody. By the time I got home, your grandpa would have the kitchen floor scrubbed and my clothes washed and everything.
Yeah,
So,
you had 4 of those little kids, so it was at least 4 times that he did all of those things.
yeah, I had 4 little ones.
So, great job, Grandma. Fantastic job.
Well, yeah, I enjoyed this. I was waiting for your call, and in the meantime, I was talking to
Dan.
Doden's birthday.
Oh, Dodie. Oh, Colton. Yeah, it was
Yeah, Colton's birthday.
I called him. Yep.
He called me and thanked me for his card and his money.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know. And then I was talking to his daddy, and I told him, I said, there's getting to be so many grandchildren in that now. I have to kind of cut my money down.
Yeah, that happens.
I remember years ago when I only had 1 or 2 grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
Grandpa would put $50 in it.
Yeah.
But
that's okay for the rest of the grandkids, but don't cut me short, all right?
Well, I had to cut them all short because it kept increasing.
Sure.
You know,
that's all right. So long as you don't cut your love short for us.
No, I love you guys. I keep counting them. Like I think number 7's due in a couple of days.
That's right. Yeah, Robert and Sarah. They sure are.
Yeah.
So, okay, Grandma, you did a great job setting listeners up for the show. Thanks for doing this.
Well, I enjoyed talking to you guys.
Can you guys give one more goodbye for Grandma?
Goodbye.
Mrs. Tinoco.
Bye.
Thanks, Mrs. Tinoco.
Good night, Grandma.
And
Love
behave yourselves.
You
Okay.
too.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
When you see the road from every direction, it will give you eyes, give you hope, it'll give you perspective. I've been back and forth, and yeah, I had my crashes. Now I've seen the road, it goes every direction.
Tonight on the show, we got the full crew again. Sadly, not the Dust Girls did a fantastic job. That video is available now, or that podcast. But Landon Free is back in the United States.
It's Logan.
Great to have you back.
Thank you.
Great to have you back, Landon. Tonight's episode, 3rd speech in the Speeches by Mom series. This one comes from Debra Barone, played by Patricia Heaton in the Everybody Loves Raymond series. This was one I watched growing up. I started watching the show again recently, just like randomly, on cable at a hotel for the evening or something. And it struck me just how much of like a jerk that Ray is. And then I also saw in these other shows like King of Queens, whenever that was on. I've somewhat recently rewatched Father of the Bride with Steve Martin. I'm like, these guys are such butts, almost example. To the extent that it's not even funny. So it sort of just made me think a little bit how did that come to be, right? So if you sort of imagine spectrum of change for dads and moms and husbands and wives from first kind of popular television like Father Knows Best, Leave It to Beaver, you can sort of picture what those dynamics look like.
The Dick Van Dyke Show.
To Dick Van Dyke Show. I didn't watch that, so I really can't picture
it's really good.
But
Andy Griffith. Boy.
Andy.
To the 1990s, 2000s, where you got, Everybody Loves Raymond, King of Queens. Then to modern day, I don't think any of us really watch a whole lot of popular TV anymore, but we can maybe speculate. Any references for modern day couples comes from Girl Meets World. Since I'm a huge Boy Meets World fan, I did admittedly watch some of the show in order to just get a sense of where things are at. So that's the spectrum. So when I expressed this idea, the 1990s sitcom mom-dad dynamic, was that something that you guys had like thought about before?
I've definitely reminisced on how good TV used to be. Yeah, maybe it's just what you grow up with you think is the best. But I even remember, I don't know, I think our dad bought like a DVD package of the Dick Van Dyke Show, and we watched like all of those episodes, and they were great too, even though they were black and white and super old. But yeah, I think modern comparisons, everything is so niche, and there's not like everybody watches kind of what they want to project onto themselves, and there's no longer like a broad American spectacle. I no, that's not true. I think This Is Us probably hit that. There might be a couple, but they're like the exception now, not the rule. Whereas, the rule used to be you had several of these every year.
Dick Van Dyke was from Illinois, wasn't
Danville, along with
That's right.
Yeah,
Dick Van Dyke's appliance store. Ross, Matt, any 1990s, 2000s family sitcom pillars that sort of provide a reference point for this idea tonight?
Honestly, I think Everyone Loves Raymond was kind of the show for our family for a while. My parents always preferred that to Friends, especially for us kids. They're just a lot more wholesome sorts of things developed amidst Ray's and I would say Deborah's shortcomings too. She's not perfect, but yeah, no, I would say that show I thought was probably one of the most watched shows in our household. Yeah, I mean, there'd be a handful of other just kind of general family sitcom things that would happen to be on, but yeah, I'd say that was a big one.
Yeah, we were not allowed to watch Friends in my house, and I've actually attempted to watch it since then, just like out of curiosity. I can't watch it. That show is so dumb. Now, to like provide a little bit like clarity, like I I don't want to like make it out that like Everybody Loves Raymond is like a bad show or like inappropriate, because admittedly I've been watching some episodes on DVD this week as I like get the speech that we're pulling the clip from. But I feel like there should be like a big asterisk like next to it. Like, like Spotify puts the COVID-19 blue banner on and episodes talk about that's sort of what Everybody Loves Raymond needs. And we've brought up COVID on our episodes, and we haven't gotten the blue banner yet. Maybe there's a certain number of times you have to say it. So, okay, Ross, family sitcom pillars.
Of the ones you listed, at least from that era, none were like huge as far as watch all the time. I would think of the ones you've mentioned so far, King of Queens was probably the most commonly watched. I actually did watch a lot of Friends like through high school and stuff. I just thought it was funny. But I feel like for our family, we were maybe more into some of like the older comedy ones. Like, I don't know, like in high school, you could like watch, what was it, Nick at Night or whatever. They might have reruns of like Gilligan's Island or like I Love Lucy and like shows like that. So I feel like those are probably more the shows we watched. I remember like still my parents would watch like MASH reruns or something, or what's the other one? Coach. That was a show I actually really liked to watch, actually. So I feel like even when then maybe like those shows had passed, but we kind of watched those and they were still maybe a little more readily available than they are now. But yeah, as far as the current ones, I watch, like I said, Friends a lot, but as far as like our family, I think King of Queens was probably the most commonly watched one.
Ross, defend Friends for Mike, or do you just go along with his?
I don't have a lot of,
dismissal?
I think it's funny. Lots of inappropriate humor and not a lot of like, it's not the family wholesome show that fits into like, I feel like the genre we're kind of talking about. I think there's a lot of funny parts in Friends.
Nope.
Wrong.
Let's cut to that speech here. In order to sort of center us. So the speech comes from season 7 of Everybody Loves Raymond. Context is Deborah and Ray are getting dressed for Robert's wedding to Amy. And Deborah has left Ray to get himself dressed and ready to go. And she re-enters the bedroom where he's getting ready, and we will play that clip from there. Boom.
Stupid weddings.
Here they are. Aren't they beautiful? Ray! I left you up here an hour ago. I showered, did my hair, got the kids up, got them dressed. Kids, go downstairs. Mommy's yelling. And you can't even do yourself?
What? I'm ready.
Everyone is waiting for you. Oh, look at this. Look, this goes on after the pants, Einstein. Here, do you realize that it's a 3-hour drive to Pennsylvania? Amy is waiting for me. Robert is a nervous wreck. I mean, come on.
Hey. You might be a little too angry to do the zipper.
What have you been doing?
I got the speech, the frickin' toast thing I gotta do.
Would you stop obsessing about the toast? Just say something funny and heartfelt. Nobody cares.
I want to know why they're getting dressed for a 3-hour drive. They should have gotten a hotel.
If you got, people didn't get hotels all the time. Why did you choose this scene?
I wanted a scene that just like captured and succinctly captured the sort of like dynamic that we're getting at here. The dopey husband and the wife who just has to do everything. And the scene's only 35 seconds long, and I think that it clearly captured that. So, I guess a good way to sort of segue into the meat and potatoes of the episode here is, I'd allude to earlier of how, 1950s, 60s television, it clearly has that image of just the title itself, Father Knows Best, right? Like, clearly implying that the man's in charge and, everything sort of flows out from there. Obviously, no dopey husband going on there. So how did we transition from that to, and obviously Everybody Loves Raymond is not like an island. We reference King of Queens, The Simpsons, Family Guy. It's a lot of different things going on, right?
From power hero dad to dopiness.
Yeah.
Part of it probably is capturing something in the culture that's going on. I don't think that all of these TV shows that portray the similar dad are just like, they didn't make it up out of thin air and like, oh, we'll make up this kind of overweight, chubby, kind of lazy, sits on the couch and drinks beer after work type of guy. I think that they probably are, something was changing with men, or maybe, something was going on that was an actual thing. I think people maybe exaggerated a little bit, but I think that a lot of men probably were kind of the dopey husband, at least in a way. And then the shows probably, exaggerated it to kind of make their point and make it funny. But I would think that it probably comes from somewhere, at least start somewhere real. There was something going on. Whether it'd been going on for a long time or is a new phenomenon, but that would be my first thought.
Yeah.
I think that's on point what you said there, Ross, about exaggeration. Because it is like important to remember that, in both circumstances, 1950s Father Knows Best type television. It's like, even that is an exaggeration of reality. It's women, I'm speculating, mansplaining here. It's like, it seems, women have always found, not just women, but anyone who seems to have less authority in a particular position, like finds ways to like have control, right? That's just like human nature. In the same way with like this, it's like, is there truly a real life Ray Barone?
if someone really were like that dopey, like well, they'd probably be divorced by time that the show was on after so many years of marriage.
No, I think there's tons. And they're not divorced. Like it's real, and it's still, still works out.
How real though is the question? How much can a real life Debra Barone tolerate? How much should she tolerate? How much
Oh,
divorce
that's
is there
fair.
in the
That's
world?
fair.
You know what I mean? Like people getting divorced all
Yeah.
the time. Like
Like
Yeah.
1 and 2.
Yeah, I could definitely see things like this, and even like, especially in a world where people are delaying marriage longer and longer. I think there are a lot of couples who live together like that for a while and then eventually break it off for who may have gotten married earlier, in previous generations, So yeah, I think it's pretty. I think there's something going on. Yeah, but I also think that just in a world that's like seems to be post virtue, we're not really interested in that culturally anymore. I think just relatability is king, right? So like people don't want. I feel like there's not as Hollywood TV shows are there to sell to people at the end of the day, and entertain. Like it's not purely money driven, but yeah, like people I think have more of a taste for relatability, as opposed to like someone to look up to or someone to emulate their life after. So I feel like there's an element of that too. So it's not just like the cultural representations, because I think there's probably been dopey dads who've had there've been bad dads and bad husbands for all of history, They look different now, I think, than maybe previous generations, but yeah, I also think there's more of a taste in the public for just like relatable characters as opposed to like
True.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Relatability,
Which is, if you go deep into your literature classes, is like the difference between modernism and postmodernism. Like at some point, one of the ways to define that is like, do you realize the context in which you're existing, and therefore it's like more real or it's more aspirational? And as you get closer to postmodernism, it's like, well, we know what we're doing here, so why even try to like paint a facade on it, or to be like perhaps virtuous or perhaps aspirational? It's just, let's barely describe what's going on now, and maybe that's as good as we can do.
Yeah, just to put a fine point, my word I like. Yeah, the aspirational is the facade.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That you're. Yeah.
Yeah. But still, like, worthy.
But I think the relatability thing, I think the reason that's important is because it addresses a little bit of that like aloneness of like that's a consequence of like nihilism or nihilism, if you will. I think so. Yeah, I think that might be like the core tenet or core value there. Russ?
No, I can't same ballpark of what you guys are talking about, but I think like in that idea of like relatability versus virtue, like how you're going to portray something. I don't know. I still strike that book, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits Highly Effective People. I read that in PT school, and so much of that still like pops into my head today. But one of the things he talks about in the book is like, for some reason we want part of us, not the good, like best part of us. Like you almost want other people to not do well, or almost like are slightly happy if they don't, simply because you're always putting yourself in competition with them. So it's hard to see like a win-win scenario. It's kind of a, if they're winning, I'm losing. That's kind of how we tend to think about things. So I feel like it's kind of the same thing. Like you would hope that if you saw somebody doing things really well, you would be inspired by that person and want to be around that person and kind of, like let them make you a better person. But I kind of think the other way is when we see people do things really well, too often the temptation is to start looking for their faults and kind of, or making them up, but just kind of taking the opposite route. Instead of letting yourself be built up, is starting to try to tear the person down. So I think that a lot of people would see television in that way, and then kind of like the relatability. It's like, if this person's a dopey husband, it kind of gives me, in a weird way, like permission to do so. It's not a bad thing anymore if that's what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
So I think that there's something to that, probably, of, just from the man side of things, like when you're watching TV, you want to feel good and relax. So like people would probably prefer to, see somebody that is dumber than them to make themselves feel better, as opposed to somebody that when you stop watching the show, it's like, man, I really need to go do the dishes or something. That's just not, when people sit down and watch TV in the evening, probably what they are looking for, I think.
So what's the question we're grappling with is what, again?
Backtracking related. Oh, yeah, exactly. Just explaining the chasm between Father Knows Best and...
Slightly tangential. I'll try to bring it home with some background of it.
So...
What? Go ahead.
Just like trying to keep things tidy here. Try something new here. So explaining this chasm between Father Knows Best and Everybody Loves Raymond. We've identified... One is exaggeration sort of playing a role, right? Neither circumstances are completely reflective of reality, for one. And two, in a changing of what an audience is perceived to value in media, from some kind of noble hero, aspirational hero, to a recognition of postmodernism, as Landon expressed it, that basically aspirations in the most objective, transcendental way are an illusion or a facade or colonialism. So therefore, the only real thing that we can pursue is relatability. And then I suggested that that is an antidote to nihilism. Okay.
I would still like to try to answer that question with some info. I would be curious though.
More, but...
So 90s sitcom father figures, Ray Romano, little slouchy in our opinion. What about Tim Taylor in Home Improvement?
Right, I saw,
compare Tim Taylor to Ray Romano. Like, just what's there? What's going on?
Okay, Ray, author, writer, artist. Tim Taylor, works with his hands. He's creating physical things. He's building Detroit. Someone else can go.
Ray Romano, neighbors are his parents. Tim Taylor, neighbor has eyes and a forehead.
Here's an interesting one. Tim Taylor, his children play a significant role in the show. Ray Romano, no, they're...
Sure. No, that is a good point.
They don't do anything.
I have not watched a lot of Home Improvement.
Because Ross was just watching Friends.
Yeah.
He just wanted the cheap laugh.
I have watched a lot of his new show, though, Last Man Standing, and I actually think that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's the
2015
version of it.
And they remade it probably a little bit, but it's good.
Home Improvement's really good. I'll just maybe get to the point. If we want to dwell on it more, we can. I do think I feel like all of the shows like always have kind of a resolving, like there's a fight, there's an argument, one side like lets their griefs out to the other, they go vent and they come back and it does get resolved. I do feel like Everybody Loves Raymond has that too. I know Home Improvement does, but doesn't it come full circle in Everybody Loves Raymond too? Where like they learn something or
sort
not?
of.
Less so. It's more.
I don't know.
There's just so much of it.
I don't know. I do remember there being a lot of like, I don't know, resolution moments, or like it's not like Ray grossly develops in virtue by any means. He has the same like idiot tendencies, like recording the Super Bowl over his wedding video and like whatever other dumb things he does. But like, I don't know. He definitely cares, and he struggles. And I don't know. Like, he definitely cares. He's sincere, if not incompetent. Which, like, isn't great. Like, you don't want.
He's at least sometimes sincere.
No, that's
question
true. That's
all
true.
the
He's not
time,
always
but yeah.
sincere.
Well, I did watch a little background of how the creators of Home Improvement came up with it. And I thought it was like an interesting context for just describing the cultural moment they were in. First of all, Jeff Katzenberg and Michael Eisner, high ups at Disney, like discovered Tim. And then when they used a book for their reference, and Iron John was the book, just like men being men. And basically, like, men since the Industrial Revolution were lost. You know, in the ag community, you work side by side with dad. So in the show, they're going to have 3 sons, basically like learning from dad, working side by side with him in the garage, primarily in that context. Because house all day, you know, who's there to teach you how to be a man? So some of the thesis for the show was like they were going to have the woman and Tim Taylor, Patricia, I think was her actress's name. It's like they believed, or as they thought about it, they're like, men and women can't live together. So what holds them together was basically like love and being a functional family. And they went out to produce a show that they just wanted to show like love and functionality like overcomes like just the dogfighting between men and women that is inevitable for many of reasons. But I don't know if that's very profound, but it is interesting to put it in the context of kids always worked or saw dad work for a very long time, up until World War II. And coming out of it, it's like now dad's coming home at 5:00 and he's still a huge deal, and we're going to like aspirationally like paint him into a hero figure. Fast forward a generation of that, it's like that's just it's a whole different dynamic of dad not being around from 8 to 6. And what do you do with it? Or how has it changed culture or the family dynamics? And I think what's most interesting is like, this is all very recent. Like we only have like 50 years of this experiment, and this art that we're analyzing is in the moment. It is our lives too, for sure. The way Frost, you father, that Matt, you father, like we're 9 to 5 guys. And that is something to grapple with that is still being figured out.
It's an interesting, I guess I don't know why, I've never given significant thought to that idea, that for how many millennia boys saw their dad's work and now they don't.
Yeah.
I feel like there's probably a lot to that, but I don't feel like I've given it enough thought to like unpack it very far.
Yeah, that's
sense.
fair. And I think maybe if bringing it back, like the point of these shows is a little bit like the dads are home. There is housework, as Grandma Tinoco taught us or talked about. Like you can do the housework and help out there. And that's like even more important now because it's the only way for our kids to see us working, right? Otherwise, we're just slouches on the couch working outside the home all day, expecting to rest. And that's not the message that is almost biologically ingrained to be sending, like, to see dad working or helping or serving.
We've brought up like several dynamics. And I know that one dynamic that I've heard some people, even like people I respect, like I know Bishop Barron did like a whole video on like the Homer Simpson effect. And I think he's even used that in other talks and speeches, like the Homerization of like the modern man, as if like TV did this to us. whereas I think it does go both ways. And he also, I think in the video that he did specifically about Homer Simpson, like he kind of put this more in a context of this is like a women's liberation. This is a like post-feminist change. But yeah, I think there are a lot of different there certainly could be a dynamic of that. Just with like Hollywood being more feminist and more egalitarian and not wanting, almost in a reaction to like the strong father figure being like, okay, well, let's have strong women and have the dads be the laughing stock. But at the same time, like, I don't know if it's as simple as that, because I've heard a few different people kind of make that very straightforward critique as if that's the only dynamic here. But yeah, I think there are a lot of like very interesting historical as well as just like philosophical and cultural things that like created this reality. And now like Everyone Loves Raymond and, other shows are just kind of like reflecting it back.
So I did listen to that Barron video on the Homer Simpson effect, Matt, that you shared that talks about this. And he identified the relevance of Nietzsche, the dynamics of, or just the question of, is virtue a sum zero game, essentially? And, with what he referenced with Nietzsche, and how it sort of relates to the sum zero thing. Because I believe, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but one person courageous here creates someone else uncourageous over here. Right? Is that okay? And what I think Barron sort of gets at in the Homer Simpson video that might be part of what the 1990s, 2000s Dopey Dad sitcom, for shorthand, gets at is that, yeah, there can only be one hero of the family. And for 50 years on television, it was the dad. And so now it's going to be my mom or the mom, right? Because articulating what the reality would be, somehow between both of those, or celebrating the virtue of both, right? Like that's admittedly more complicated, right? Like, how do you portray, let's just say for simplicity, and I think most people say it's accurate enough, how do you portray the elegance, the beauty, the femininity of the 1950s mom at the same time as the, capable, intelligent, getting things done-ness of Debra Barone, right? That's a lot more complicated to portray both of those things at the same time. No, at the same time, Deborah, she's very attractive, but did Ray how often did Ray ever celebrate her beauty, to put it like very concisely? Yeah. But this is if we have a theme of our podcast, I don't know, maybe my theme is like finding that right middle is like the most consistently challenging thing of being in this life, right? Like to okay, here's a simple example, right? You have right now the the craziness of the defund the FBI myth alongside the defund the police myth, right? Like, there is no way that reality is so simple is that, yeah, those are clearly the answers, right? Like, that's insane. You put it really simply, right? But finding the right middle, because both of them are responding to particular realities without finding the more complicated, nuanced truth that's in the middle.
I just had before we start to, when I kind of gave the example and then Mike talked about it from like the kind of zero sum game, like it's not just, like I feel like that's something we all do. So I had this example pop into my head when Mike was talking about it. So me, Landon, and Matt are gonna golf here pretty soon, Okay, Mike, you've been invited and turned us down enough times.
And I'm not gonna win unless Ross loses.
But no, but like Matt's joking. But like, okay, so Landon's much better than me and Matt, but me and Matt are pretty comparable. Ballpark. Matt's maybe slightly better than me, but not like another level better. But like Matt also being bad makes me feel a little bit better when we golf. And I know that sounds terrible, but like it's just true, because if we're out there on the golf course and I'm the only one that sucks, like you start to feel bad. And I'm not saying that I shouldn't watch Landon play and be like, yeah, I need to practice more. But in reality, when I see Matt hit a bad shot too, it's kind of like, oh, I'm okay. And I feel like a lot of dads probably have the exact same thought, watching these shows.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was just kind of a funny. I will try very hard to root for Matt this weekend, but when he makes a bad shot, part of me is going to be a little happy. So there you go. But I feel like also kind of based on what you guys had said, Matt or Mike, you were talking about how it's hard to portray, this 1950s mom that's beautiful, put together, takes care of the kids in house, and, it's kind of maybe kind of the more modern mom with a career and kind of keeping things together and being in charge. I just think it's kind of interesting, like societally maybe, and maybe I'm going too far here, so, take me back if I am, but I feel like for women, we've kind of just added more to their plate. So it's like, yep, you're supposed to be put together and take care of the kids in house. And yep, you're also supposed to look really good while you do it, but you still have to do that. And then now you also are supposed to have a career and be smart. Not that they weren't smart before, be educated and, be able to work up the ladder at work. But you're also still supposed to look good, and you're also still supposed to take care of the house and kids. Like, we kind of have just kept adding things, where I feel like to men, it's kind of like, and maybe it's a little bit of what Matt had referenced, kind of a response to having these strong male figures, kind of put at the forefront of entertainment and life for so long. But I feel like it's harder to maybe explain societally. Like, I know we as a group would probably have our strong opinions on what a man is supposed to do and a man is supposed to look like. But I feel like as a culture, we've kind of deconstructed the role a little bit. Because if you start if you say you have to be the provider, that's, you can't say that anymore, because that's not the man's job anymore. Or, I know you could just keep going down the list of more traditionally masculine roles. And I feel like those have kind of been taken away from being uniquely masculine, I guess. So I feel like in some ways, not to defend the dopiness of Ray, but I feel like we don't have a strong model. Like we don't have a strong cultural model of what a man is supposed to look like, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a good point. Who would be the closest one?
Well, okay, don't podcast scared here, but and this is not an end all be all, but I think it is something to this. But I think President Trump has occupied some of that space as a certain masculine archetype. In terms of,
explain that more, because my first thought was I don't buy it. So give me some more.
Well, an archetype, right? With his demeanor, just speaking observationally, right? Because to put it just a very simple narrative, and of course this isn't say like, oh, anyone who votes for Trump is like thinking this way. No, it's just it's a certain social dynamic going on there, and to answer that, like, masculine role, right? Because in fairness to President Trump, he did observe stuff going on in the hearts and minds of a lot of people. And so rather than, with respect to obviously Republicans, since that's the side that he's working on, instead of just being quiet and muted about it, like politicians had been for some years, rightly or wrongly, he was loud about it in the most loud way possible, right? And which spoke very much to certain masculine qualities, right? Just being being loud, right? And standing up for what you believe in, right? Regardless of believing whether that's right or wrong, how he went about different things, right? There is a certain like just objective reality to that sort of dynamic going on there. So,
but question, TV shows, somewhat I would say like mainstream popular media were for pretty straightforward guys. Like, is there anything aspirational for us in mainstream media?
Tom Selleck on Blue Bloods. Oh yeah.
Even that's like that. I mean, Blue Bloods prime was like 6 years ago.
I can't believe that show's still on. Must be like a soap opera by now.
I was gonna make a joke. No, I should. Don't podcast scared. I was gonna say if Donald Trump is our archetype for manliness, I'll take Ray Ramone any day of the week. But Romano. But no, as far as current television,
or just like something mainstream enough. Yeah,
maybe I'm that far removed from the mainstream, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like nothing's come out except for superhero movies and, like, I don't know, a bunch of other random stuff that no one watches. I don't know. I'm having a hard time.
I think maybe superhero movies is kind of the answer. I feel like
it's superhero, but like the only one I've seen is the Dark Knight trilogy, and
that was like 1,000 years ago, Grandpa. Jeez, there's a new Batman out,
but like that's all fairly garbage too. I mean, it's also like business. I don't know, business magnates like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and like those guys you wouldn't like look to for much virtue other than just like pure capitalism.
Okay, so maybe here's one thing going on there, because it's like, Christian Bale in The Dark Knight for our older viewers. Like there's a lot of good qualities in there, honestly, in him, right? I mean, I think if we just thought a little bit about, like, honestly, like, sex really has virtually no role in any of those films. Third one, sort of minimally,
but like they're not father figure
like,
type things.
Yeah, I mean they're certainly not the whole package. They're no Hugh Jackman.
Hugh's pretty good, actually. Hugh's a good one.
Yeah, but there is a lot there in Batman, and like what Ross said with like Tom Selleck and Blue Bloods, like I've watched a fair amount of the show back in the day. It's like, man, yeah, there's a lot of solid stuff, and you have millions of people watching that show. So what's the difference? I mean, if we're trying to calculate like the quantity of influence TV has on the formation of positive masculinity, I don't know. There's only one father knows best, and now there's like 5 or 6 plus 30 mother knows best, and 40, what if, you can fill in the blanks with other things. But okay, so what are some things that you guys do in practical life to honor women specifically? They can be your wife or non-wife. Do or have done.
I mean, I think it's easiest to talk about Claire. I mean, so like getting her flowers is like, it's kind of like a cliche thing, but like she just really loves it. Like that makes her day, and will like, like she really appreciates that particular gesture. Even more so because like they're like we'll have some discussions kind of like akin to like the Deborah Ray, like, oh, I really wish you would do more of this, or I really wish you would do more of that, like on both sides, right? Just kind of like part of us like still learning about each other and what's important to us in terms of running a house. But like as much as like that stuff kind of occupies the conversation, it's like, really just the small things, like, and just being like, all right, I'm not going to do whatever I wanted to do tonight, Claire. Like, let's just go for a walk, and just kind of the spontaneity. Those are the things that like Claire really values. So like, that's why I have thus far figured out how to honor her, in a way that's meaningful to her. In terms of non-spouse, I mean, I do have like, I think being a PT, like historically it was a very female dominated profession. Now it's, I would say, much more evenly split. But there's still a lot more women in my workplace than there are men. And we're working with like people who are really heavy or like people who are potentially, so like, I would say that is one thing I do look out for. Like if I see a male therapist kind of like with a heavy patient, I'm probably a lot less likely to be like on guard for if something bad's going to happen, but like if there's like, a female therapist who's got a really heavy patient and they're doing something precarious, like I'm just going to keep an eye out, like in case, or if, they start, I mean, a number of like the women in our clinic will have like creepy old guys flirting with them, and it's like, I'm going to like, if there's one of those people I've heard about, like, I'm not going to go in the office and document. I'm just going to stand right there and like, just be on my computer type, just cause like, creepy old dude, like probably won't be as creepy with like another dude around,
Hey, Matt, you're going to be one of those guys one day too. Some zero game, am I right?
Gosh, I hope not. But yeah, I would say those are like the things. Yeah, those are the things that kind of immediately.
So, obviously you guys know, so we have 3 kids. The oldest of which just turned 6. So for the last several years, 2 years, we've had 3 children in the home, none in school. So that's quite a load for my wife just to handle during the day, and trying to, she's kind of running the house, if you will, as far as house duties and taking care of children and all of that. So I tried pretty hard in the evenings to, I guess, relieve her at times, like if she needs a break. So like something we've done since we've had more kids, like, I don't know. And I mean, it kind of sounds silly. Like I'm kind of in charge of kitchen cleanup, and I know, she obviously cooks the meal and stuff, but so right now she's had some issues with blood sugar, and like exercise is good for her. So after dinner, like I send the kids to the playroom, and I used to would have just kind of play with them, but I send them to the playroom and they're supposed to clean it up. They don't do a very good job. And like I just handle like dishes, sweeping the floor, wiping that, like I just do all that so she can go downstairs and exercise a little bit. Kind of just to give her a break from the kids, and also just because she needs to do it for her health. But I feel like that's kind of a particular example that I've tried to work in. As far as the non like spousal women, I used to always try to like tell a woman like if hey, you look nice today or something if they clearly did. I've kind of shied away from that, honestly, as of late, just because I feel like there's so much about. I just being totally blunt, like I don't know how it's going to be perceived by them. So I've kind of tried to stop doing that type of stuff as much. But so I don't know about that one as much.
Yeah, Ross has actually been sued for sexual harassment.
He's that creepy old guy, and he's only 32.
Yeah. No, my old perspective was just like, like if you can tell that they intentionally put in extra effort for whatever reason, just say you look nice, right? And I wouldn't use the word pretty. I would just use the word nice or something. But because I was intentionally trying to not come off as creepy, but then I just feel like today it still might be perceived as creepy. So I've kind of shied away from that a little bit. The creepy old guy in the PT clinic, I'm also PT. That's just a real thing. So I remember like in the hospital, like I feel like there were several times like I would kind of, like that patient was coming because PT is more, there was more women in my workplace. And it was like, that's going to be Ross's patient. Just like, it's kind of as simple as that. Like I'll get that person because they're going to make because all the women at the time were younger. So it's like, they're going to make all of them feel uncomfortable. So, there you go. I actually had one time an old woman make a comment to me that was, I'll say, inappropriate. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is how the girls feel like all the time, probably. And yeah, because it was kind of a weird feeling.
Landon, you can. Did you have something honoring women?
Honoring women, yeah, I think I'd just classify like several of these as like the love languages, like quality time or acts of service. I think as it relates to these sitcoms we're analyzing, I think they kind of boil down into like anticipating acts of service. Like it's one thing to say like, go do the dishes and, sweep the floors. It's another to like be able to know those things need to be done and just do them without being asked. And that kind of makes the household items a mutual responsibility. And then what Matt and Ross were saying, I think just, carving out quality time and recognizing when that needs to happen, needs to be given, or shared is part of like the not being the dopey Ray Romano archetype.
I'm gonna real quick. I want to get this out because I know Mike, you're probably gonna take this somewhere else, but I wanted to say this when I read the outline and stuff. I'm gonna defend Ray just a little bit, and don't podcast scared.
You're a hostile sexist. You're the hostile.
Yeah, but so obviously I'm not gonna go as far as the grandpa who told her that was woman's work in one of the other videos.
I did see that. I was like, whoa, this show was...
Yeah, I'm not saying that, but like, I thought of a couple examples like in our household that I could be perceived as the Ray, and it's like, I won't say there's absolutely nothing there, but there's also like a but. So, so in our family, so right now Julie's, she's home with the kids, and so I'm at work during the day, and there's a lot of things that, I'll be honest, like she's around the kids more than I am, so she knows more about just some day, I don't know, one of the times the kids asked for a snack, and I was after work, and I was like, I don't know, Julie, can they have a snack? And it sounds like a very Ray, like, I don't know, well, can they have a snack? But like, I didn't know what type of snacks they had in the last hour, like, because it's about dinner time. So like, if she had just given them a snack, like I wasn't going to, if she hadn't, I probably would give them something, if that makes sense. So like, or like when we pack for vacation, a lot of times she'll pack the kids, and maybe, maybe I could do more to help, I'll admit it. But I feel like the but is like, she also just like, because I would be late for work, she's the one that like gets them ready every day. So I just from a straight practical standpoint, like all of the, clothing, that type of stuff, she deals with that a significant amount more than me. And a lot of times she packs for the trip while I'm at work. So like, yes, a lot of times if we're going to go somewhere when I get off, she's already packed her and the kids a suitcase, and I'm just throwing mine together. So it's like, oh, just like Ray's wife did, she got the kids ready.
Yep.
But it was also like, I wasn't in the like, I physically wasn't present to do so, which maybe that, I don't know if you could say there's an issue there, but so not like 100% defending Ray, but I do feel like there's some things that it's almost like, I feel like it's kind of, this is maybe a response to the men didn't do enough for so long, but some of the things are maybe a little bit more like, yeah, that's just a practical thing, as opposed to a sluggard of a father and husband, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. Fair enough.
That's my last point.
Fair enough. I hear you. So I think, so Matt, you had posted a good article from Psychology Today. Why are women attracted to benevolently sexist men? And then I went to the article links to 3 other articles. One is an actually published research article on the same topic. And there's 1 or 2 quotes from here which were quite striking to me that I wanted to sort of color this honor conversation with. Okay, so this is straight from the introduction of this article published by Palin Gould, Tom Kupfer. published or available from Sage Journals online. And I'll just restate the title for this particular one, just for clarity. Benevolent Sexism and Mate Preferences. Why do women prefer benevolent men despite recognizing that they can be undermining? Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead in the introduction to a couple of sentences, or one sentence that strikes me. Hostile sexism encompasses overtly prejudiced attitudes, whereas benevolent sexism involves subjectively positive attitudes, parentheses, like, quote, women should be cherished and protected by men, end quote, end parentheses. Chivalrous behaviors, so that is a benevolently sexist behavior. Attempts to achieve intimacy with women. So if you want to be intimate with your wife in any way whatsoever, that's sexist. Okay? I'm just reading it like it is. So it sort of just
Women
brings
hate
up...
intimacy.
You disgust me.
Of all times.
I have no feelings for you. So it sort of wants me to come at this honor thing from like just another angle, or just adding some layers to it. It's like, why, speaking from like my experience, like, why do I want to honor women, right? So if a woman by herself has a flat tire on the road and she's like waving her hands like whatever, why am I inclined? No, that's a bad example. Let's just do a simple like door holding scenario.
Go with the flat tire one. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Door, oh yeah.
Would you help a guy with a flat tire?
I mean, if he's waving his hands, sure. That's why I quit the scenario, because I think it'd be the
I'd
same
hit him.
thing.
Teach him a lesson.
No, with the girl in the door, I think it is a useful example, because holding the door for a girl, whether you are on a date with her or not, or if it's my mother or grandmother, if you hold the door for her because you think she can't lift it, like, yeah, that is sexist, because statistically, it's very likely that she can lift that door. Right? But moving that door, even though I know that she can carry it or move it, it's like, if she can't move it, like that would obviously, well, a turn off if they're like a peer. With respect to like my mom, it's like, that would be obviously not a turn off, but it would be like, oh gosh, like mom, what's wrong? Like, what's wrong with your health? Or that'd be like something wrong with that situation. But it's like, you open the door. I'm trying to like put a fine point on this. Like, what is that feeling? It's like, you just want to celebrate their femininity. Like, that sounds like really foofy, but that's just like the most concise way to put it. I want to celebrate your femininity. And it's like, a guy, well, 50% of the time, I'll open the door for a guy, versus just, well, it's one of those things, difference between letting him go first, or just like doing the arm extension, sort of straight arm, sort of thing, 50-50 between those two things, versus the woman. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to take a step back and let her walk through the door first. Whether, yeah, she's 80 years old or, 30 years old. Or like even 8 years old. Yeah. I'm trying to think if that'd be appropriate. But like, yeah, no, that still is definitely appropriate. 8-year-old girl. So I don't know. How would you guys articulate? Like, how would you articulate that inclination to honor a woman in those small ways that we're talking about here? Because, yeah, I mean, I think we're all on the same page. We don't want to date or marry someone who's weak. Like, I can vouch for all of your spouses. They're all pretty strong. They could hold their own in a dark alley if need be.
My wife has no upper body.
Yeah.
She will admit it immediately. That's not even being...
They cannot hold their own in their dark alley.
Oh,
I'll tell them that.
She would be terrified of
Yeah,
an
that's
narcissist.
very nice of
You
you.
guys aren't helping our case. You're helping them
Mike-
with sexist.
Mike was podcasting scared there. He didn't know what somebody was listening was going to think. But to proceed with your point, yes.
They can carry moderately heavy things and open a door. Yeah.
Yes.
No,
She can open most doors.
most doors.
I feel like, and I know this sounds funny, like it's hard to articulate what is like just in my mind, is just a natural, obvious,
Yeah.
commonsensical thing.
It's
Like
an
it's almost like,
knowledge.
like, yeah, it's kind of like you just do it. And it's not like, oh, my culture has imposed this upon me. It's like, no, like you just do it. So I feel like with all people, I don't know, I feel like just, I'll use the word like charity. Like we should act with charity towards everyone, and who that person is, how well we know them, what our relationship with them is, and even like, yeah, our genetic makeup is going to impact how I act towards them. So I think that we should respect everybody, but kind of like uniquely to who they are and their the circumstance. So for your question, how should we honor women? Like that would fit as, we should honor them and to talk foofy, like the greatness that they bring to society and their feminine and genius. And in a lot of ways, just that's going to be kind of like Matt said, in some circumstances, that's going to be taking on more physical roles simply because of biology. So even if it's not necessarily required, like you said, I understand that she can open a door, but that's like my attempt to show her that I respect her, if that makes sense. Because it's like, yes, this door is not 1,000-pound store. You can't lift it, but I'm trying to show you that I'm, attempting to take a role to show you respect, if that makes sense.
Did you guys have anything else on how you would articulate the sort of dynamic of opening the door for women, like doing her honor? How would you express that in a sentence?
Perhaps like sacrifice might be like the easiest, like the quickest, like reason as to why you do it. Sacrifice, and then just like, I don't know, conscientiousness. Like I feel like that's a display of, I mean, obviously like everyone's called to make sacrifices in life for the good of others. Like that's kind of the definition of what love is. But yeah, as in terms of like why doors and why not, anything else, I suppose that much I don't know. I couldn't say. But basically, I just think there's something to be said for like sacrifice and just being aware and like looking out for people that are I don't know. I think they're particularly masculine things. Like,
I do wonder, like, in this isn't like intended to be like a condescending. I know you guys just discuss it, but like this is not intended to be condescending. It's just like an honest question. Like in same-sex unions, I'll say, it's like how, like what plays itself out as the pattern, right? Because yeah, I don't know. Yeah, with respect to things like holding doors, or I just keep going back to the holding doors thing.
yeah,
Or just like small thing, like showing them that, yeah, like the flowers. It's like, okay, but there's like there's a corollary to flowers, right? So maybe the example Claire might, I don't know, fill in the blank, Matt, would be the corollary to flowers she would do for you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like what you're getting at is love languages.
Yeah, I guess.
But at the same time, I feel like there are love languages is something that I think apply to everyone, right? So like,
sure, yeah,
regardless of genders. But I think, and to some degree, like, I think it's okay that there are arbitrary like masculine and feminine courtesies that get handed down. Like I think that's a pretty universal thing, that there's some arbitrary masculine and feminine thing. Like in some cultures, like men always prepare the meat and women always prepare the vegetables, right? And in another culture, it could be the exact opposite. Like there's still gendered roles. And to some degree they're arbitrary, but at the same time, like that means something to that people, And I don't know if that's inherently bad, I guess. So like opening doors is like a common one here, or another one I've heard is like a guy should be on the street side of the sidewalk. That's like
I bet.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking that exact same one. Yeah.
So like, yeah, is it strictly necessary? Is it like, but I don't know. It's a little arbitrary, but at the same time, if that's like a culturally meaningful thing, which I think it's starting to become not so much, at least with the sidewalk thing, because that becomes tricky when your sidewalk's more dangerous than the street because of all the potholes and you've got a stroller and it's like, whatever. But anyway.
I think that's I think Matt kind of said it. Like, I think kind of the root of it is there's a lot of kind of cultural things. And I think some things probably came from practical places, right? Like, I'm sure I think I've heard with the sidewalk, something with like when mud gets splashed up or something like that. And a man might have a trench coat that goes lower. I don't know. There's like something like that actually might have come from just like a practical that made sense place. And in getting handed down, it might not be as applicable anymore. But kind of like you said, I think there's something to be said for, like, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, like, to make the effort still, even if it's not necessarily necessary, similar to opening a door or whatnot.
Okay, so on our journey, we've gone from explaining the chasm between Father Knows Best and Everybody Loves Raymond, touched on nihilism, exaggeration, relevance, wanting to be relevant. We touched on, what was our next question after that? Before practicals and honor. Well, Landon, I think you went into home improvement and how that was like an intentional point of contrast to some of these other shows in actuality, right? We identified some of the differences between Tim Taylor and Ray Brown.
Yeah, I think there's similarities, to be sure.
Well, with
their
fairness,
shortcomings.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. In fairness, it's like, yeah, I mean, guys can be dopey in the ways that, Ross just admitted, yeah, and those things definitely happen, but it's a matter of like playing into it or not. Okay. And then we went through like practical sort of things that we feel obliged, we want to do to honor that thing. Maybe we're all, it's possible. We're all just we're what's the word I'm looking for? Deluded.
Benevolent sexists?
Yeah, we're well, you guys admitted being benevolent sexist. I would let my spouse handle herself in a dark alley.
I actually feel like there's something to be said for that. Like, what's the alternative? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, and so it's funny you say that, because actually one of the conclusions in that study about benevolent sexism, which I do think is like a pretty comical term, especially given this conclusion.
It's like a benevolent slaveholder.
Well, they're like, so this is, so there's a quote within a quote. So the quote directly from the article is the quote, and then the rest of it's just from the summary of the article from a third party. That makes sense. So Psychology Today summarizes thing, whatever. So this is from Psychology Today. Quote, given that having a kind and caring partner results in increased relationship satisfaction, and considering that having fulfilling relationships are important for well-being and happiness, then, and this is the quote directly from the article, it might not always be desirable to discourage women from preferring mates with benevolent gender attitudes. but yeah, so it's the type of thing that like I feel like it, like Ross mentioned, it's so or I don't know if common sense. It's like it's just very natural to us to like behave a certain way. And like after all of this, like deep dive into the merits and demerits and morality and immorality of treating genders as if they're different things. It's funny just like that this is the conclusion. Like, oh, like this was fine the whole time and we can probably get over it, but I don't know how many people read that study. So they must not know about that anymore.
It got rebutted. Okay, here's what I got for a final roundabout question here. I want to go a little bit into the sort of imagery of the father handing off his daughter metaphorically in marriage to his son-in-law. So let me do it here in a sort of ephemeral way. Let's say that your new let's say son-in-law, your son-in-law. You learn at the same time as your spouse that your son-in-law is getting married. So he did not ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. What do you do?
So they're not like actually getting married today. Like I just
no,
find
not
out
today.
that they're
No,
engaged.
not today.
Okay.
Yeah, they're engaged.
I think I would talk to him about some of the similar things that we're saying here. Like I don't think I would outright say you can't marry my daughter, but I think it would be worth a discussion of like some of the things we're saying here, because like I'll go on my soapbox for a second. Like not only are the things we saying, like I feel like a lot of the things we're saying here are like we've kind of said it's okay, right? It's not necessarily bad that there's these arbitrary gender roles. Fair. I think most people would agree with that. And I think, yes, like absolutely recognizing that has been a ton of abuse and like, yes, if you watch Mad Men, those are terrible men and all that stuff. Like there's also something to be said for not only are some of not the Mad Men stuff. Sorry, that was supposed to be a negative, but like some of the quote unquote gender roles here we're talking about, like in some ways I wouldn't say that they're not only okay, like I think they're actually good and important. So, yeah, I think that would actually be like, I would view that as an opportunity to like talk to a young man about just how to be a better man and how that's actually really important. And I have a huge interest in it and that he's marrying my daughter. Cause that's actually no joke, kind of a fear of mine. My daughter's only 4. And, I've thought about this. Like I would be like, I'm actually scared that she will end up marrying a jackass, if that makes sense. Like if I could hand her off to like what I would deem a good man, and I don't think I mean, I'm not talking like, sitting on my deck with a shotgun, like, but like if I could hand her off to like what I would deem as a good man, like I think I would be okay saying like, yeah, they're going to screw up, make their mistakes, learn to forgive each other, blah, blah, blah. But like if if she told me she was engaged to a jackass, for lack of a better word, like that is one of my biggest fears in life. So anyway, I think that would definitely, to answer your question, sorry, I got off my soapbox. To answer your question, I wouldn't ban the marriage, but that would actually be a sit down, like we're going to have a conversation.
Okay.
If he will not have the conversation, I will ban the marriage.
Yeah, no, I think dude, I was just thinking, like, what if he didn't, what if he was kind of whatever, but like, yeah.
So
I think
I would tell my daughter she should not marry this man.
Yeah.
I would kick his ass is what I would do. Yeah, like in all of our minds, just to keep playing off it. Sorry, maybe I already got off my soapbox. I'm back on it. But like in our minds, he would be receptive to the talk, right? Because he would then he'd take the rah-rah speech. But if he actually responded with like I disagree, like that would be, Yeah.
Well,
Ross's worst nightmare.
I think the more likely situation, if you were in this situation, is that he would say, "Yeah, sure, I hear ya," and he'd effectively be lying. Like he really actually does. He thinks you're a sexist.
He would say what he needs to say to marry your daughter, and
in which case you gotta make things hotter. You gotta increase the temp.
I would kick his ass. I already said it.
Literally in that room, you got a pager to Julie. You're like, increase the temp, and you just keep increasing the temp in that room. The door's locked, and eventually he just dies, and then you just walk over his body, and you look in Julie's eyes as you walk out of that room and say, "Won't have no problems with him anymore."
On complete second thought, not complete second thought, but just to add a layer to it, and this is a serious note. I actually, a lot of night, like if I lay my daughter falls asleep and I'm in a room or something, like I'll say a little prayer for her or something. A lot of times I actually will say, like, I pray that she knows her worth and won't accept anything less. And so I don't know. Part of me is like, man, I feel like that would kind of fall on me a little bit. Like if she was okay being treated in that way, like as her father, I feel like one of my biggest roles is to like show her how she's supposed to be treated, you know, by how I love her and how I love my wife. Man, so that's a bigger question than you thought it was going to be, Mike, because I think that would start asking a lot of questions about just the job that I did and stuff.
I've got my I had my funny answer ready. I sort of forgot my I think, Ross and I were talking about this my canoe share, like aggravation and grudges are like definitely my thing. And yeah, because I mean, like I just acknowledged with you, like I would definitely have a major problem with it if he did not ask for her hand in marriage. And yeah, if he were the kind of guy who would do that, yeah, him sort of like giving a saying what he sort of has to say, to get through that that confrontation that comes to be. Like, man, yeah, I would definitely struggle. It's like, man, he's saying yes, but oh man, yeah, that'd be really hard. It would weigh on me the rest of my life, probably. I say that jokingly, but I mean, I just know it. I know that it would. So one other thing I wanted to say, like on this exact same point, something that's like crossed my mind is like, what's the meaning of that metaphor of handing off your daughter, like physically in marriage at the wedding ceremony? And I think that is this. Up to the point of marriage, I mean, I do think that it is the father's it's the father's responsibility to literally, if necessary, lay down his life for his daughter. I mean, yeah, his son too, sure. As goofy as that sounds, but just like in a special way, like his daughter, right? Because you're recognizing something that is uniquely sacred about her being female, right? So that she has the opportunity to continue doing these things in her life that you could not do because you laid down her life for her. And then when you're handing her off to your soon-to-be son-in-law, it's like you're giving that responsibility like onto him, right? That, okay, now it is your responsibility to, without hesitation or without too much hesitation, to lay down your life for her. And of course, it's like, we can of course say, well, it's just not realistic that you're going to lay down your life physically for your spouse. Sure, yeah, that obviously doesn't happen a whole lot. But like really believing that and internalizing that, like informs and influences all of those small metaphorical ways that like come up in the rest of your life, right? Like, why do we celebrate Lent, right? To remind us of the suffering of Christ, right? And because those those things echo metaphorically throughout the rest of our life. So, yeah, hot room, box him, challenge him to a foot race where the earth is falling behind us. It's like you have to keep a certain pace or you just fall into a black hole behind us. Those are some other strategies potentially to test his worth.
I would look him in the eye and hand him a sword. I'm also holding a sword. And I'll say only one of us is walking out of here with her.
Yeah.
And if he picks it up, he can marry her.
Oh, and you wouldn't pick it up?
Of course. I've already got it in my hand, man.
And one thing I would say, because I guarantee you there's a lot of people out there who would be horrified by the way we're talking. But I think an interesting conversation I had with a friend, with one of Claire's friends. So she's Mexican, and she mentioned she would rather date a white guy because she saw that there's this sort of machismo dynamic among Mexican men. So, right. So her dad had the first and last word on everything, right? Her dad made all the big decisions. Her mom always deferred to her dad. Her mom waited on her dad. Like if he wanted a beer at a family party, she would get him one. And that would be like, he would say, well, she would tell him or he would tell her to do it. She would, it was kind of an expectation. Right. And same thing with like her brother. We'd tell her, and that was just how their family operated. Right. Just their cultural gender expectations. So she didn't like that, which fair enough, right? You don't have to like that. But I also just threw out to her, and I actually used like Ray Romano and like the 90s, like Dopey Dad sitcom type as like, well, this is like an alternative, right? So you can go from like guy who cares a lot and wants his way, but you can also have guy who doesn't give a crap about anything and just wants to sit around and watch TV, So like as much as like, yeah, you don't want to completely defer to your spouse and have them run the show. You don't want to have them completely defer to you and be a total dope who has no desires in life, and has no opinions about the way the family should be run. So I would say similarly, like with the marriage stuff, it's like, I guess I'm going to err on the side of being the dad who wants the best for my daughter and really cares about that, as opposed to the dad who just wants to get along with his future son-in-law. Because like that's kind of the alternative for people who would push back on like this. What I think a lot of people would think is like a cartoonish caricature shotgun, hot room scenario, but it's like, well, gosh, like the alternative is just Dopey Dad. I think the alternative is Ray Romano, who's just kind of like wishy-washy and, doesn't have principles that he stands by,
Yeah, but I know you're not saying this, but I'm just saying it out loud so it's clear. It's like, yeah, we're obviously not celebrating this, your Hispanic friend's father who's not going to go get his own beer. Yeah, we're advocating for you going to get your own beer and then asking your spouse like, oh, do you need a beer or do you want, want whatever? It's like, that's really what, and yeah, why is that not everywhere, but yeah, that's the ideal middle, if you will.
Or even beyond like the ideal middle, I think maybe in that family, the mom gets the beers, but then the dad does something else.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So like it's I would say beyond the particularities, it's just like genders sacrifice for each other, and they like,
so
they sacrifice wholeheartedly, and that's how it should go.
This reminds me of something from the sermon at your wedding, right? What was from Paul? What was the exact line? Like, outdo each other with honor, or you remember that?
To be honest, I can't remember the exact Bible verse. I should. That would be actually a good thing to.
But yeah, that
keep.
That's
But yeah, I know that that Father Joe kind of used that as his homily, because Claire and I are both very competitive people in other things, and we try to be competitive in that as best we can. But yeah, no, I think that's kind of at the heart, like, whatever like that looks like, just sacrifice for each other.
Landon, son-in-law. Oh my gosh. What would you do if your son-in-law doesn't ask for your daughter's hand in marriage?
I chimed in. I think it'd be, I think it'd be a similar conversation to what we're having here. I think the harder you would press, the less successful the outcome. Whatever level of respect or just like character evaluation you would try to understand as a part of this asking ritual, I think would not be accomplished in one meeting, but maybe a couple. And
yeah,
so long as you like felt comfortable with them, I kind of feel like that explicit tradition will have died off in 20 years. So maybe not, though. Like maybe you over the courses of the half a dozen to a dozen times you hang out with them before that would come up, I don't know.
Clear.
Yeah.
Make it clear.
I don't know if intimidate's the right word, but just like project your traditionalist vibes. Yeah, all right. Intimidate. Like I think the projection that someone like Ross would put off, like someone's gonna ask him to marry his daughter, right?
Landon
like,
gets
best compliment I've had in years.
Right? Like you're not just gonna go marry Ross's daughter. You're gonna ask him just based on who he is. So I don't think you'll have to worry about it.
Landon gets out his golf clubs. Matt gets out the squat rack. I take
have a
him.
home gym now. Did I tell you?
I take him to a local rock wall.
That's incredibly intimidating. Like if you're some 50-year-old guy and you take a kid golfing, you beat him by 20 strokes, like you're gonna let an old man beat you at golf.
And Ross is gonna read him Lord of the Rings. It's been a great show. What we got going on in 3 weeks?
It's Landon's turn.
Landon? Larry?
Cool. Wait, what's my name?
Larry?
We'll let you know. I've been traveling.
It's been a great show. Thanks for listening, folks. And thanks for drinking.
And thinking.
With us.
Road will lead us to a better place. Hey, yeah. To a better
Well, Ross, you and I had a canoe trip recently.
It all started, I've always wanted to go on a backpacking trip. So I've done a lot of camping and stuff, but never like anything intense or remote or backpacking or anything like that. So I wanted to go on a backpacking trip. So I started, with the amount of kids that I have, I decided that, a 4-day trip to Colorado just wasn't going to happen. So I started researching backpacking in the Midwest and came upon the Ozark Trail. And it sounded like just what I was thinking of. So, of course, I texted Mike. And, of course, he's done most of or all of the Ozark Trail. So we were going to do a backpacking trip, but due to pretty significant heat, we decided to switch to canoe trip. So
it would have been so hot. Ross would have died.
I was expecting an all-inclusive backpacking trip where Mike carried my backpack. I still might have died. It was pretty hot. But no, so I went down to Mike's place Thursday night. We podcasted. It was great. We woke up.
That episode is available.
Oh, it's
that
up?
episode is recently available.
Whoa.
Yep.
Let's see. Woke up. I didn't realize how early we were gonna wake up. 4:15. And drove down into Missouri, into the Ozarks for my first canoe backpacking trip.
Except there is no backpack involved.
Well,
although you did
I'll
bring
say
one.
I brought one. I'll say canoe camping trip. Sorry. I had a backpack in the canoe, but yes, canoe camping trip. No, it was fantastic. It was hot. Probably, gosh, what was it? Like 96 degrees or something?
Oh, it was over 100
Over
degrees.
100 degrees.
Yeah.
But no, I'd never done a canoe camping trip, so loaded all of our gear up. We had 2 coolers, lots of gear, a lot of stuff fit in the canoe. I wasn't convinced when we started loading it that we were actually going to make it. And I thought we were going to have to tip the van driver to take some stuff back for us. But I mean, it was fantastic. Clear water, rock bottom river, moving at a nice pace. Jumping in every hour or two to cool off, cliff jumping. I wasn't the biggest fan of the cliff jumping.
I've never seen anyone less of a fan of cliff jumping.
I mean, I jumped off one cliff. I didn't really enjoy it, so I just why am I going to jump off more cliffs?
Usually, whoever I bring, I'm poking them in the back with a spear to get over the edge of something big and tough, but I didn't feel like Ross would be receptive. So I just
what are we talking? 15 feet, 25 feet?
Mine was 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think 10.
Yours probably got up to 20 or 25 feet.
Yeah, 25.
I think I was guessing 25.
Yeah,
I think I've done 15 feet before, and that's a extra.
Not even worth mentioning.
That's an extra half a heartbeat in the air that your stomach drops for sure.
I don't know. It wasn't awful. I just was I didn't find it enjoyable. Anyway, away from the cliff jumping. So we did some nice canoeing. I'll admit I was slightly humbled. I've had a canoe on Illinois rivers before, but they're a little slower moving than the current rivers, so. I don't think I looked like a complete idiot, but I definitely didn't look great when I was in the back.
I believe I gave you a B- or B.
I think B was fair. I think throwing the minus in is just kind of rude.
Yeah.
Depends on my mood.
Okay. So a nice B. But no, I think my favorite part was when we just hang out. On the second day, we just took a break, popped our camp chairs right in the river, sipping on a Jameson and ginger ale and watching the boats float by. That was real nice.
Yeah.
The camping spot was great. Yeah, all around it was a great trip. It was fast. I feel like with the drives both days, was it just shy of 3 hours? And
a little less than 3
it was
hours,
just a packed trip, but it was good. The caves were nice, spring-fed river, nice and cool. Yeah, I would like to do it again someday. So
nice.
Probably a highlight was either we got to explore a cave, which was pretty cool. It might have been watching Mike's internal conflict at having harassed people for breaking the rules and then later breaking the rules himself.
I was grandfathering you.
No, I definitely enjoyed the cave and just sitting in the water, sipping on a drink, just living life slow for a little bit. That was nice. So great trip.